representing Franchise Secrets, Eric Von Horn.
Trey Powell. I've known Trey for about 20 years. And
it's amazing it's been that long.
I know, I can't believe it until I see whiteness all over.
Experience,
lots of wisdom. I bought Liberty Tax about 20 years ago, and I bought it in Kansas City, Missouri. Trey was an area developer there, which meant he basically got to control everything that I did. It was also meant that he was helping me and mentoring me. And because I was a mid 20-year-old first-time business owner, super aggressive, tell me what to do, I'll do it. And I'm sure I'll push back with attitude, but I want to win. I want to win. And so he was my area developer at that time. And he was younger, 20 years younger, aggressive and growing, and wanted us to win. There's a lot of us new franchisees that came in at that point. And I think I've said it before, but he would hold meetings and be mentoring us. And one of the things that he did was say, put an AHA on the right-hand side of your page or at some point of your page. And when you do that, when you have a big takeaway, then put the little bullet point underneath that. And I've told him this several times, but it's amazing how you learn things 20 years ago that you still do today. And so that's why I will never, ever forget Trey and always be grateful for the things that he's done in my life. He's a very successful franchisee, made some, and a very even more successful area developer at Liberty Tax, and then a very successful franchisee at Mosquito Joe. He's made really smart decisions, business decisions, as I've watched him grow over the years. And so he's just a great guy, great father, great husband, great family man. And so I'm honored to have you here to chat with us, Trey. I'll turn it over to you.
Wow, thank you, Eric. I appreciate that. The aha moment. We used to teach that in Dale Carnegie. Is you come home from a conference with pages and pages of notes. If you remember nothing else, you should remember the front page, right? Aha. And every time you get one of those ideas, it was like, oh, that's brilliant. Put it on the front page, on the aha page, because you'll probably never read any of the rest of the notes. But if you just take that home, there'll be some things that you can definitely implement. So you can do that today. If you find anything that we say today that's productive, make an aha page. So basically just a few things I want to cover in regards to recruiting. Number one is I want to talk about culture. Building the right culture in your organization makes recruiting a lot easier. You really want to build a culture that people want to become a part of your company. You're not trying to convince them to become a part of your company. Number two, I want to talk about identifying exactly who the candidate is that you're looking for. The more well-defined that is, the easier it's going to be for you to find the right person. I want to talk a little bit about the mindset of recruiting, the psychology that goes behind it. We'll talk a little bit about the ads and getting the number of candidates that you need in order to get the right person placed. And then we'll actually end on really talking about my process that we use here at Mosquito Joe that can be applied to pretty much anyone that you're going to hire, as far as the actual interview, the phone screening, the interview, what we do, and kind of incorporating all of the things that we talked about on those first 4 points. So number one, let's talk about culture. You got to have an amazing culture, especially as a small business, to attract people to your company, to keep people in your company. I talked to my office manager and I brought her in and I said, what made you want to work here? And she said, when I came in for the interview, I didn't really want to work there. But when I left, I was like, man, I really want that job. And she says, I called my husband in the car and she goes, gosh, she's like, I'm so mad. And she goes, I don't think I got it, but man, I really want it. And he's like, why? And she's like, it's just amazing. Like everything that they're doing there, it's a great family. That's what she said. It's a great family environment. I just loved you guys. You're really professional, but not like stiff. She says, you guys were super organized. I asked you a question about what do you do if it rains? And man, you had an answer. You had a system in place. And I felt like, wow, I'm not going to be like sitting in the dark, like trying to figure it out. I could tell you guys were really successful, and it was like something I wanted to be a part of. And so, you know, these are not just things I think that that you want to say in an interview. It's one thing to say it, but you really got to do it. You got to embrace it. You got to create it. As the owner, if there's nothing else we can do for our organization, it is instill and create the culture that is going to be very attractive to the best talent that we want. And if we do that, I think we will attract those talents. And not only that, but we'll keep them on board. Some of the things that we do here at Mosquito Joe, I really kind of changed our whole culture about 2 years ago, because I didn't have any of the right people. I said this to somebody the other day. I said, I didn't like the guys working for me, and they didn't like me. And that is not the place that you want to be. I had a ache in my stomach every morning coming to work going, who's not going to show up today? What kind of pain in the rear am I going to have to deal with today? And so we just kind of shifted and changed everything about the culture. I actually talked to some people about what is it that people want? What attracts millennials, which was kind of the topic. You hear a lot about that. People say, oh my God, how do I work with these people? They don't have the same mindset. They don't want to work. You know, what makes them, you know, different? How do you recruit them? How do you keep them? How do you motivate them? Well, there has been some studies done on this, and there's a very specific reason why everyone, even though hardly anyone is qualified to work at Google, everyone thinks they want to work at Google. Everyone thinks they want to work at some of these companies. And if you look at the culture they've created, it's all very intentional. From the bikes and the games and the colors and the way the place is built out. The founder of Mosquito Joe, when they got out of the little hole in the wall they were in when we first started, and they built their kind of the place they were going to go to the next level. When I walked in, I was like, holy cow. I mean, it was impressive. I mean, they had that, just everything was like state of the art. At least it seemed that way. That, they had, old barnwood on a lot of the walls. They had ping pong tables in the middle of this very open workspace. They had a cafe that was there. And you had, young people working on, with their little headsets in the cafe, in the middle of the company. It was like, I mean, you could just tell any young person that came into this place was like, wow. We all described it as just like a little mini Google campus. And it was nothing like Google. I mean, nothing like it, but they did a lot of the things. One of these folks told me, she said, you can spend $2,000 on a pool table that no one will ever use, by the way, and put it in the middle of your conference center and save $65,000 on payroll annually. And does that pay off? Because people come in and they see that, like, wow, this is a cool place to work. I want to be a part of that. Those things matter, and you have to think about your group. Like, I always had cornhole boards and stuff, and I got a little lesson about 2 weeks ago, because that's what I like, and I thought that was cool. And the guys did it, but they didn't do it every week. And my my operations manager brought a basketball hoop from his house that he wasn't using, and the guys are now showing up early to play basketball. They stay after work to play basketball. And I'm like, God dang, $250 basketball hoop. Why didn't I think of that? I hate basketball. I was thinking about what I like and not what they like. So that's important to know your people. But little things like that to create culture. We do barbecue Friday. Every single Friday I cook. I have a smoker out back, and I'll spend $50 on a piece of meat, and I'll cook it either sometimes start the night before, but during that day, when they all come back, we all sit down, we celebrate the week, we go over the numbers, and we eat together. It's not expensive. It does take time, but we video that on Facebook Live every week, and people notice, and people are like, hey, can I come to work there? And, you know, it's my way of trying to reflect the culture out there into the public, for people to start talking about, man, that's a great place to work. I want to work there. That's a you know, great thing. Because sometimes it's all from the inside out, and you want to basically promote what you're also doing, you know, out there. So I can't talk enough about culture. I've probably spent about 8 minutes on that. So let's move on to the next thing. You got to identify who exactly you want. You know, if you need people so bad that you're like, I'll hire anybody, you know, if they can fog up a glass, you're not going to have obviously the right people, and you're going to hire too quick. Once I identified exactly who the right person was for the job of a technician, my job got infinitely easier. I can talk about it in the public and say, this is what I'm looking for. And people start coming up with people they know that fit that position. And then I don't always depend on ads on Indeed and things like that. People refer people to us. Our last hire was actually a referral. And so when you think about your vision and how you envision your company, and you're thinking about this job, who do you see in that position? Are they male? Are they female? What age are they? What kind of education do they have? What kind of experience do they have? The more that you can define what you expect to get there, the easier it's going to be for you to narrow down and focus on the right people, and get away from the old people. You don't want to interview people who are either overqualified or underqualified or just don't fit. A good example is that this technician position that we have, they're basically out. It's kind of a labor job. It's not like as hard as roofing, Eric, but they're by themselves all day. And so that makes the job seem harder than it is, but it's not that difficult of a job. I don't work them more than 8 hours. And I've found over the years, the people that stick with this are generally 20 to 25 years old. Usually they're living at home still. They usually had 1 or 2 years of college, but they didn't finish. And they're still doing a job that they should have been doing in high school. They're working at Food Lion. They're driving parts part-time for Napa Auto Parts. They're working in a restaurant. They're working retail. They just haven't figured out what they want to do with their life yet. Anybody know somebody like that? Anybody know somebody's kid that's living in their parents' basement or whatever and playing video games or whatever, and they just haven't figured it out? Well, that is a great place for me. And the reason is because those kids are making $9, $10, maybe $12 an hour. And we can pay between $16 and $18 an hour if the person's really good and they can work hard. Well, that's a really hot spot, because if they have no experience and they're not a skilled worker, skilled workers are going to be over $20 an hour. I have had many of them work or apply to work here, but I'm wasting my time to interview them and hire them and train them. If they're making $25, $30 an hour and they're interviewing here, it's because they're mad at their boss and they just want to escape from that situation. And after a month or so, they're going to realize, man, working, that boss is probably a lot better than I thought. I got to find something else because this is not cutting it. I would much rather have somebody making $9 or can't find anything more than $9, $10, $12 an hour, suddenly making $16 to $18 an hour. This is like a dream job. The hard days become a lot less hard when they're making more money than they've ever made anywhere else. And that is from identifying those right people, because if they've made $20, $25 an hour before, or, well, there's another thing, but if their parents gave them everything they want every time they ask for it, they're not going to work as hard. They have one bad day and they're like, oh, I got to find something else. you want it to be in a situation where, man, it'd be very difficult for them to find something that pays more. In the book Millionaire Home Service, he says pay people 10 or 20% more than market, and I totally believe that. I think the going rate for this job is $13 to $15 an hour, and my guys are making 16 to 18. And I'm proud of that. And I'm excited for them when they get the bigger paychecks because they work for it. We figured out a way to work them on a percentage basis of what they do, which makes them work hard, makes them take more responsibility for it, which makes a lot of sense. So you got to know who you're after. So I've drilled that in. That's, you don't want to waste your time with the wrong people. Next point is, you have to develop a mindset for recruiting, and people who don't have tons of experience in recruiting. I worked at sold Cutco for many years before I got out into the workforce. And if you're a manager with Cutco, you're recruiting 100 to 300 people a year. And I was recruiting 100 people a year when I was still in college. So they taught you how to interview people, how to make them want the job, and go through. Well, in order to get that many people hired, you're probably interviewing 300 to 600 people to get 100 to 300 a year on board. So it's a lot of experience in doing it. So a lot of the things I'll do, I don't even know what I'm doing, but I'm doing them because I was just trained to do it. So there's a lot of psychology in recruiting, and I kind of compare it to dating. I wish in high school I'd have been anywhere close to as good at dating as I am at recruiting. I would have dated a lot more, but I unfortunately will admit to you that I am not nearly as good at dating as I am at recruiting. So what is the psychology for it? You have to be constantly posturing people. You have to understand that you have something that's amazing and you don't need everybody. You're looking for a very specific thing, and you need to tell people that constantly. When I first pick up the phone and I'm talking to somebody on the phone that I'm screening, I say, hey, we're just screening through applications. I literally have almost 100 people who have applied. So I just need to ask a few questions to see if we need to take this any further. Wow, that puts them, holy cow, okay. So it puts them in a position where they're trying to impress you, which is exactly what you want from a recruiting point all the way through the whole process. Even after you get them on board, they need to be striving to become a part of this thing that everybody wants, because there's hundreds of people who are applying. I'll show you that a little bit more, but what you don't want to ever catch yourself doing is saying, man, we really need people. If you're coming from a position of desperation, obviously that's not a very good place to work. And that's going to make me start asking a whole lot of questions. So let me ask you, what is a day like? Like, well, how does the pay work? You're putting questions in my mind. I don't know what those questions are, but no one wants to work here is what you're communicating to me. So I need to start asking questions. Well, nobody's asking me questions until we get to the interview. I'm asking you the questions at first. Now, I don't say that out loud, but you'll see and how I boom, go through a phone screening. It's like, it makes a huge difference in the attitude. I had an office manager, and the reason I point this out is I had an office manager one time, had a fireman who got up, who came in to apply. She thought that was fantastic. She was so excited about it. She said, oh, thank God you're here. And so, you're a fireman? Yes, you're the fireman. Come here and give me a hug. And I sat there like, oh my God. And she literally got up. She walked across the room and did the most awkward thing ever. She's like, come here, come on in. You're gonna, and he's like, am I gonna get a hug? Oh my God, I'm about to be hugged. And she hugged him. And she interviewed him and he left. And I said, you know, you'll never see him again. And she's like, what? I love him. I was like, I know, you told him. You even hugged him. And she's like, what? I just wanted him to feel how welcome he would be. I was like, no, you did everything wrong. I was like, and you think about it from a dating standpoint, if someone did that to you in dating, you would want to be as far away from that person as you could ever be, right? So you have to push them away. And the psychology is that they will come running and fighting for the job that you have. So let's get into the next thing, which is placing the ads. So number one thing is I put a time frame on it, and I put this especially on my folks. So I said we need to hire 1 or 2 people, and we have a week to do it. My job is to make the phone ring off the hook, and I'm gonna place an ad on Indeed or wherever I go, and I am going to boost that ad and pay. I may pay $500 to Indeed in 2 days because I want 100 applications. If I get 100 applications, I'll have 50 of them maybe who I'm remotely interested in by looking at it. I'm going to put a bunch of qualifiers on there. I'm going to make them answer questions. I'm going to make them take assessments. At least 50 to 70% will never even bother to take the assessments. Guess what? They're not interested in a job. Move on. So now you got 30 people there. So you guide through there, you see which 30 meet remember we identified who we want. Do they fit the description? You got to know who you're after. You'll narrow it down to 15. You call those 15. If you get 10 of them on the phone, I will maybe bring in 5 for an interview, but it's a numbers game when it comes down to it. And Kale, can you put up on the screen our actual phone screening? I'll walk you through it. And I created this really for my team because I found that none of them had any experience in recruiting. They naturally just kind of did a lot of the wrong things. And so this is kind of step by step, and you can kind of take this format and upgrade it if you have higher level employees. I have a different sheet that I do for office managers than the one that I do for technicians. So one of the things that I shared last time we went to hire folks, what you'll find especially with new recruiters, new managers, is they want to get this over with as quickly as possible. They don't really like interviewing people. The whole process is agonizing. They don't want this person to feel cheated. They don't want to make the wrong decision. So what happens is they'll bring somebody in and the first interview, they'll come to me and they'll be like, I love them. Can I hire them? And I said, yes. After you do 10 interviews, you need to get 10 people in here. Well, we're going to lose them. I said, well, you better get busy. There's another 50 applications on Indeed. You need to go and screen them, get them in for interviews tomorrow. And until you do 10 interviews, you're not going to select that person. So they do another interview and a third interview. Then they come back to me and they're like, okay, so the first person is okay, but I did find another person. Can I hire them? And I'm like, when you get to 10 do 10 interviews, and then you can make your decision. What I found is I did this both on the office side, and I also did it on the thing, is by the time they got to the 10th interview, that first person and that second person they were interested didn't look as good. And they ended up choosing number 6 and number 10 or something to that effect. And you don't have anything to compare it to if you don't do the numbers and do. So there goes my 20 minutes. So I'm going to try and get through this and wrap it up. So here's where it would go as far as phone screening. I've got a list of 10 people or so that I want to screen from the 30 or 40 applications so far. So ring, they answer the phone. Hello, I say, hi, this is Trey. You applied for a job through Indeed with Mosquito Joe. And they say, oh, yeah. I say, well, we have a lot of people who are applying. So we're really just screening through applications right now. And we want to see who we want to bring in for an interview. Do you have 2 minutes to answer a few questions? Oh, yeah, sure. I am taking control of this, and I am not going to start asking them super open-ended questions like interview questions, because I need to figure out a few quick things to see if they're qualified or if there's any complete bombshells. Like if they have a DUI, they cannot work for Mosquito Joe. If they're not going to pass a background check, they cannot work for Mosquito Joe. So here's what I'll do. I'll say, are you currently working? Now, what I really want to do is if they're current, I want to see how quickly they might be available. I'll say, how much experience do you have in customer service? Well, I did this or I did that. I say, on a scale of 1 to 10, how do you rank your people skills? Now I'm going to ask a couple of 1 to 10 questions, because this will help me evaluate, are they too cocky, or how much confidence do they have in themselves? If they rank themselves 10 out of 10, I'm going to follow up and say, is there no room for improvement? And that's going to bump them right back on their heels. Oh, no. Well, yeah, there's always room for improvement. I'm just really good. Okay. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how organized are you? Okay. And I'm going to get to tell them. They tell me at a 10 out of 10. So how organized is your car? What does your car look like? Here's another two good questions that can save you some money and some time. When we pull your driving record, what are we going to find? I didn't say if, I said, when we pull your driving record, what are we going to find? My whole process of going through this, they're like, man, this person's serious. Like, this is like, I got to step it up. Obviously they'll tell you what's on their driving record, funny enough. The second thing is, when we do a background check, what will we find? Yeah, and they'll tell you. And obviously if they expose things that are not good, or they just don't talk in a way that you like, I say, this says if, I would say, when we ask for references, work related references, are you going to be able to provide people that we can call? Let them answer that. So if I like the person or don't like the person at this point, it says no, yes. So if I don't like them, I'm going to say, okay, we have a lot of people who are applying. If we contact you in the next few days, that means we want to set you up for a secondary interview. All right. Thanks for sharing some time with me. Goodbye. All right. If I like them, I'm going to say, all right, we have a lot of people who are applying, but I do want to schedule you for an interview. Are you available tomorrow at 2 or 4? Have time set up in your calendar. Give them 2 specific times. They will fight to find a way to get, even if they're busy or whatever, they'll take off of work. They'll go during their lunch, figure out a way to come in, because I want to do this. I'm not saying, when are you available? Well, I might be available at the end of the week or next week or whatever. So let's go over to the next page, which is the, it's not going to take you a long time to get to that next page, to the actual interview itself. I actually have it here. I can get started while he puts that up there. So when I bring them in for an interview, I'm going to try to make sure that the office is organized, things look clean. I'm well dressed, other people are well dressed, but not overdressed. We're professional, but we're friendly. They come in, I'm going to shake their hand. Thank you for coming. Sit down, fill out this, application. We have your resume, have them go through that. I book interviews about 30 minutes apart, because I want them to see somebody when they're walking out that's sitting there waiting to be interviewed. I want to, when they're coming in, they'll see somebody else exiting. So I put them a half an hour apart. I don't care if it takes 35, 45 minutes and they have to wait. I want them to see that there are other people applying. It confirms what I'm telling them, is that I'm only looking for 1 or 2 people. So, what you got? I mean, does that make sense? All right. So one of the questions I'll start off with, when I sit down, I'll print off every single application that has come in the last 5 years. And I'll have this huge stack, and I'll put my hand on it, and I'll say, we have a lot of people applying. As you can tell, we're only looking for 1 or 2 people. So I'm going to ask you some questions to give us a chance to get to know you better. This will give you a chance to get to know us better as well. What's your story? So they see the applications, they see that process. Now I'm going to say, I'm going to find out what's their story, see what they say. I love this second question. It says, what's the biggest thing you ever learned from your parents growing up? I say that to them because it's going to usually their answer tells me a lot about how they were brought up. And whether it was good or bad, what they had to say about it tells you a lot about them and who they are, and what respect that they have for people that were around them growing up. Why should we hire you? What motivates you? What frustrates you? That first section of questions is fine. I want to know who they are. I have a whole section of questions there on what kind of performance do they do? Are they a hard worker? How would your prior employer describe you? That's a good question. You ever had to take care of equipment before? Some of these are specific. Next ones, I'll ask questions about availability and dependability. I might ask, do you have any vacations or obligations scheduled for the next 6 months? How many times have you called in sick in the last year? Some people call in sick all the time. Other people never missed a day of work in 6 years. And, they'll usually answer pretty honestly and give you an idea. So at this point, I'm going to say to them, from what you've learned about us, I'd say, how much do you know about us? What kind of questions do you have for me? it's really funny. Some people have really done their homework. Other people haven't. If they haven't done their homework and it's somebody that I'm really interested in recruiting, then I'm going to now put on, I don't know, a 5-minute sales pitch about Mosquito Joe, about my organization. They see trophies around the office. All of our numbers are on the boards. Recognition is there. We've got every Google review, every Facebook review, every 10-star, NPS score. And I'm going to put together a little, I don't know, 2 to 5 minute talk about who we are and what makes us who we are. By the end of that, it's something that they're going to, we've created a situation where they're like, wow, this is a great place to be. I want to be a part of this company, and so forth. So I don't know, is there anything there at the bottom of that sheet, or is that the bottom? I thought I had on there at the bottom. No, I don't. So I basically end this the same way as I ended the phone screening, which is I have basically a canned thing that I'm going to say yes or no. I usually do not hire on the spot. I would say, we've had a lot of people applying. If we call you in the next 2 days, it means we're interested in taking it to the next step. If it's a yes, I'd say, hey, we have a lot of people who are applying. And I'd say, if we contact you in the next 2 days, we want to take you to the next step. It's kind of, I leave everybody on that. When they leave, I put a scale of 1 to 10 at the top. How do I rank this person to how bad do I want them to work here? And I'll have other people in the office rank them, and we compare notes, and then we interview the next person. And then when we have them all, we select the 2, we call them, congratulations, welcome to Mosquito Joe. So let's open it up for questions.
That was great, Trey. Guys, put in the comments or like one of your takeaways, or just, what you enjoyed about this. But Trey, you put time into this, and I mean, this is amazing. And I know we'll get this out in an email to everybody, both of these PDFs, and just thank you. Guys, any questions? What questions do you have for Trey?
I would have something, Trey, for you here, and thank you for taking the time to share this. It is great, and it makes a lot of sense, everything you share there. You talk about the culture, and I believe it is crucial for the retention, right, of your people. Being in an own service type of business, where I would assume with Mosquito Joe, like mine, your team are most of the time on their own, right? So they are not working in one location. Any trick you might want to share about how to cultivate the culture when your team is often on the road and 80% of their time, or sometimes even more, on their own?
Yeah, so I think that's a great question. And I do in my interview also mention them to the fact that they do work alone. And there are some people that don't do well with that. And I have to describe that to them. And it does make the job harder than it seems, because some people, when they're on their own, they feel like they're in paradise and they just enjoy the surroundings. Other people focus on all the bad things. Like if when they're by themselves, all they can focus on is the heat or the weight on their back or whatever. And so I do think it's important to make sure that they're aware and say, how well do they, anybody can do it when they're working with a whole bunch of people, but by themselves, it's a lot harder. If you're roofing a house by yourself, that would suck in comparison to being up there telling lies to all your buddies and all that stuff. So it does make the job a little bit harder. We do have them come in every single day. And so that we have like a little, what do you call it? Like a huddle for like 5 minutes in the morning before they go out. They usually, when they come back, they leave, but every Friday they're eating a meal together. They're playing basketball. They're, doing that. I mean, literally every single week, and that may be overkill, but we like it. We share the numbers with them. In here on a screen, everybody can see what everybody did every single day of that week, and they can see how much commission that they earned. Our goals tables with the thermometer is up on the wall that gets colored in every week. Our office staff and our CSRs, they have their numbers on the board. So everybody's kind of getting a little recognition, on a day, on a weekly basis, but on a daily basis, anything we have, it all goes on the wall. So people like to see their name in print. And so we try and do that.
Awesome. Thank you.
Ryan, you got anything to add?
I have a question, Trey.
Yes.
Hey, Trey, how do you structure your ads on Indeed to pull out the best people in terms of when you put it on? How do you structure them?
So, that's kind of a moving target because that a little bit changes. The biggest thing I'll tell you about Indeed, if you're using Indeed, is it is pay to play. Placing an ad on there, you're going to get 1 or 2 applicants a day. You put $500 on it, and they're going to start pouring in. So you need to get an Indeed rep to help you maybe with the ad. They can help you to tweak it if you're not getting the right results. But I mean, the bottom line is it's pay to play like any other business. If you give them money, they will give you applicants. They will push you to the top. They will push you towards anybody that might be, there. Most of the platforms are that way. That's really the only thing I can say. I don't know if that answers your question or not.
Yeah, thank you. That's a good tip.
Hey, kind of a side note on that, Trey, do you, I know you talked about kind of getting a lot of internal candidates. So I guess 2 questions. One is, what do you do to kind of incentivize your team to bring you more internal kind of referral candidates? And the second question is, outside of that, kind of like the Indeeds of the world, do you like Indeed the best, or what tool do you use to get people? So I guess the first thing is, how do you incentivize people to help you recruit like internally? And then what tool do you use externally?
So I think you have to use the platform that is where most of your candidates are going to be. Like, we've been on ZipRecruiter and found that there's not a lot of 20 to 25-year-olds who are looking for labor jobs on ZipRecruiter. They're on Indeed. But if you're looking for management or you're looking at a higher level position, Indeed might not work as well as ZipRecruiter. So I think you got to kind of know who you're after and where they're most likely to be. Interestingly enough, I've never had a lot of success with getting my guys to recruit people that they know. And I think I know the answer to that is I have very high expectations, and they know they're going to be on the line. And I don't think that they trust their friends to come and perform. They don't want to let me down and be like bring somebody in that isn't going to work hard or isn't going to, perform. The other thing is that I don't hire friends. I probably should have put this in my presentation, but I have 2 guys that come in together. I will very intentionally hire one and not hire the other. I don't care if they're candidate number 1 and 2 on our list. I will say, pick one. We'll hire one and not the other, because the one that gets hired is going to be like, oh my God, wow. Like, they know they earned the job. If you're hiring everyone and you hire them both, and sometimes that's a risk. You might have rolled the dice with the wrong one, but I can tell you that they will perform better and they will appreciate the job and they will train harder and work harder because they know they were selected. I wasn't feeding them a bunch of crap that, we have a bunch of people applying, but we just happen to hire these 2. The other reason is that if something happens and they exit, they're going to exit together, and you're going to end up with not 1 hole in your schedule, but 2. And that just bitter experience, it has taught me not to do that. If I was hiring salespeople, that'd be different. I'd probably convince them that they were both selected.
That's a good point, Trey. And I like context for things. And especially as I'm doing more of this investing, helping people with investing, learning about investing, there's a lot of different context that matters. And, you know, you could hear him say, this is his strategy, but it doesn't apply to salespeople because it's almost the opposite there. You want them to compete. So I love that you bring that in, because it's specific to the role, specific to the type of person. So anytime you guys want to bring more context into something, into conversations, I love to hear that. And I want to start doing that more and more because it's easy to hear advice out there. You should invest here. You should hire this way. You should do this, but context really matters.
So Trey, using this recruitment model that you are for this particular specific job, how is your retention working out doing it this way?
Well, since we identified the right people and started going after them and changed our thing, we really haven't lost a technician that we really liked in the last, this is our going on 3 years, where prior to that, it was hire them faster than they can quit. And that sort of mentality. I mean, we were just constantly recruiting. Now we recruit when we need someone. Or if we fire someone, we'll recruit to replace that person, or we're filling spots and we have a team. And I mean, in our business, man, it makes all the difference in the world when you're seeing that same technician back to the same property over and over again. They get to know those customers. The customer gets to know Jimmy, I mean, if you look at our Google reviews, they all talk about their technician. And that was not the case 3 years ago. When we had the guys that hated me and I hated them. So
that's amazing.
Yeah. When you find the right people, you pay them well, treat them well, you have a great culture, they don't want to leave.
Trey, I was just going to say that was awesome stuff. A lot of familiar verbiage and some things from back in the day there. Do you ever still do any of the group interviews, or do you like the one-on-one 30 minutes apart?
I haven't tried it. I don't have, we used to do group interviews is what Ryan is doing. But, in those cases, it's because we were trying to hire 20, 30 people a week or a day sometimes. But I have a couple positions I'm trying to fill, and I haven't done that. I'd have to massage that around a little bit. I don't have an hour that I would talk about myself and our company, but it might not be a bad idea to bring them in at the same time. And, but I really want to know personally about them. I mean, most of the people we were screening them before they came into that actual interview. So everyone sitting in front of us we knew they were a good candidate and we wanted to recruit them. So
going from Cutco where can I accept 20 people in a day to, okay, I have 2 spots open. I've still done some of the group interviews, so I haven't done it in a minute, but there's another dimension that comes out when they're communicating with other people and not just you. It's okay. I feel like sometimes there's some BS factor that you can, when you see somebody interacting with other people, especially it's different though, for like a independent one, that doesn't really matter. But I know a lot of you in the fitness, or you have a customer service position, that's huge to see how they interact with other people and not just their game face they put on for the interview. So again, what Eric mentioned with the context with a technician versus a front desk salesperson, I think those are two, you might not need it for that. It might not be the effective way, but that's been something that's been interesting, switching the Cutco to the front desk type thing.
I like it.
Hey guys, should we do a quick breakout? You guys want to do a breakout? Thumbs up or thumbs down? Because we can it's up to you guys. We can do like a 10-minute breakout, or down or up. Down, 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 down. All right, let's continue to do some Q&A with Trey then.
One more, Trey. Might not be the full topic of the conversation here, but the next step when you recruit them is the onboarding. Would you mind sharing some thoughts about the onboarding and making sure and validate that the choice you just made was the right one?
The only way we find out is I try and put them right to work, specifically in this position, because if we have onboarded the wrong person, we usually will find out in the field pretty quickly. If we take somebody out on a ride along and they're on their phone the whole time, that is not gonna fly. It's what are they do? Usually what I've found, if they're on their phone the whole time, they're on Indeed. And they're still looking. And so any way you look at it, that is not a good thing, whether they're on Facebook or texting or they're on Indeed. It's a lose, lose, lose. And, whoever they're going on the ride along knows to say, hey, I don't know what you're doing on your phone, but that's not going to work. You need to put that away. And if they don't take the hint, then, they'll turn around and bring them back to the office. So it's, that's, we got to get them out. The other part of it is that I have found that most people learn a lot better by doing than they do by hearing and seeing. So, if I take them and put them in a classroom and it's all theory and their mind is just going crazy about trying to envision themselves doing this, versus if I take them out and let them help treat 16 yards, and then I bring them in and put them in the classroom training, they have a whole different perspective because they know what I'm talking about. There's no, we tend to talk in our own languages, everybody, of course, talks about like the military they talk in acronyms. Well, every company has that. We talk about IGRs here. That's insect growth regulator. That, if they've been out and they've applied it in the field, they probably can remember what it is. When we're talking about a blower and adjusting that nozzle from 1.8 to 2.3, if they've never seen it and done it, they're going to spend the next 10 minutes trying to think about it while they miss the next 10 things that you say. So we try and just kind of sweep them in and get them out into the field and get them at least a day in the field before we kind of bring them back into the training. One of the things that I didn't share with you, that this is a great culture thing. I don't know if I shared this with Caleb or not. This is a simple thing, but finding out what their favorite color, the favorite candy, the favorite beer, favorite snack, every week or 2 weeks or so, we will do what we call the Above and Beyond Award. And that's at our Barbecue Friday. We select one employee in the organization, either front office or in the field, who just did something that was above and beyond. And we recognize them. In addition to that, they get their favorite beer, their favorite candy, their favorite snack, and, as a part of the recognition. And it's just like, I think they figure out that we asked for this ahead of time. They didn't know why we asked, but it's cool to get stuff that like people know you, So we try and find that out. If we're ever going to get if we find out with their favorite restaurant, we might get a gift card to that restaurant. A lot of times for the guys, it's gas cards. We'll got a $25 gas card for every 2 Google reviews that they give. And I remember what it was like to be that age and pulling into the gas station and on fumes and scraping underneath the seat for 38 cents to put into the gas can, to the gas tank to get me home. I remember those days. For them to take a $25 and put actual $25 of gas in the car is like, wow, like I'll go forever on this. So, just try and think about things that will have an impact on them, and that, and one way is just ask, figure out what it is that they like. Find out the shoe size, pant size. Some of that's for uniform purposes, but also if we were buying T-shirts or, anything like that, we already know what their sizes are.
Tell us, how have they been able to get good at getting these Google reviews?
Yes. Okay. Well, I have a business card, and what they do is every single job that they do, they leave this business card with the door hanger. And that business card says, we bonus our technicians on good reviews. If you liked if you like our service, please do a favor for your technician, leave a good review, and it has a Facebook, Google, Yelp little symbol on there. On the back of that car. So basically what we're asking the customer is not do it for us, but do it for the technician. And I've found that, it's like pulling teeth to try and get people to leave Google reviews, but they'll do it for that reason. They'll do it. Does that make sense? Oh yeah, man, if you're going to bonus him, I'll do it for him. They want to do something that's good. So they'll do it for that. On the back of that card, it says, if there is any reason that you would not give us a great review, please call me personally on my cell phone, Trey Powell, owner, and my cell phone. And these go out 150 a day, every day to every customer. And I can tell you, after we started that, not only did our reviews went through the roof, but I don't recall that we've gotten a single bad review.
Wow.
And I was terrified that my phone was going to ring off the hook and I was going to have all these people calling me for all these weird reasons. Doesn't happen. But every once in a while, I will get a call, and you want to hear that stuff. I mean, if it's not good, you want to hear it because I can solve whatever it is. I can solve it, and get you back on good graces with us. But usually it's not that, difficult. I don't get a lot of calls, but when we get them, we can solve them. But you want the bad feedback is really the stuff that tells you how you can improve. We all love the pats on the back that you're doing great and the 10 out of 10 is great. And then you see the ugly face there and the whatever, but that's the one that's going to help you to grow. Probably got a letter from a customer. It wasn't a review, but the letter basically said, and this was, I got 3 years ago when I changed my business. The guy said, I've been with your company for years, but I'm going to leave. And he goes, I'm leaving because I had 10 treatments this year and 8 different technicians. And I'm going to go and see what else I can find. And that was tough for me to read. We were struggling with turnover. We were hiring those guys that I hated and they hated me. And I had to say, you know what, as a customer, I personally had gone in on my own account and rewritten my notes to try and get the guys to do what I wanted them to do. And every time there was a new guy going, I had to feel like I had to call them and say, oh, make sure you do this. Go up to that 3rd story porch. Make sure you don't forget that. Get the boat really good, And it's just like, you know what, if I had the same guy, I would tell him once and he would do it every time. And so that was hard to read, but I should have framed it because literally that guy helped me to just change everything that we were doing.
I love that, man. I love that. No wonder you're successful. I mean, it's so clear, Trey.
Trey, can you
we do more right things than wrong things, but we do some wrong things too.
Can you talk through that transition you went from where you hated everybody and everybody hated you to get to where you are? Because I actually went through that with one of my previous locations, and I didn't have that same problem in the other location. I was able to resolve that before it started. My first location, it was just a combative environment, and I couldn't get past it and couldn't figure out how to make the transition. I just kept pulling weeds, thinking I solved the problem, and it just kept recurring. How'd you do it?
I did it the easy way. I cleaned house. We have one employee that we had 3 years ago. And almost all the one, at least I will say all the ones we wanted are still here from 3 years ago. We add every year, we add 1 or 2. We do have some that, for whatever reason don't work out, but we have good people, we keep them on. And the easiest way is clean house. If you've ever done an acquisition before, where you buy another person's business, a franchise or whatever, you got to go in and instill your culture, especially if you're buying one that's struggling. A lot of times the easiest thing to do is clean house. You bring in your culture and start changing things, usually that's going to clean house for you. There's very few people that adapt well to change, and eventually you end up cleaning house. So I I literally cleaned house is what I did.
When you say you cleaned house, did you fire everybody on the same day? Did you have a bunch of new hires lined up to start in 30 days so that you could make this transition? How did you go from how did you avoid being shorthanded? Because that was always my fear, is like,
you buy a seasonal business. Yeah,
so you cheated.
I did. I now I understand what you're asking, and yes, that I don't know that you could do it all in one fell swoop like I did. But yeah, so no, you're just gonna have. I think you're gonna have to start at the top and work your way down, and the firing will continue until morale improves.
Hey, Joe, I'll chime in here, because all of the franchises that Melissa and I have picked up along the way, we've pretty much had to change culture in pretty much every one of them, even the sport clips that we're going through now. We just have had 4 stylists leave in the last 2 to 3 weeks because of all the habits they had in there that were not the sport clips way. And so we actually are closing 1 day a week. Luckily, we're not having to close 2 or 3 days a week to give the other stylists that are left a break, so they can, until we get new stylists hired. But when we first took over Massage Envy 7-8 years ago, literally within an hour, the manager walked out, and we were like, how do you turn the computer on? And then after we got in there, we realized we had some good therapists, but not good people that were affecting culture. And they thought they had us, right where they wanted us, and we're trying to squeeze real hard. And so, we decided culture was more important than being squeezed, and we let them go. And we got down to the point in our Massage Envy clinic to where we literally had 5 therapists at one point in time, with 1,200 members.
An 8-page wait list.
And an 8-page wait list. Melissa's chiming in here. So culture was more important than letting culture be affected and establishing our culture. So we were willing to let the bad apples go and reestablish culture than let the clinic suffer with continuing poisonous peach bullet within our culture. So we just bit the bullet, did what we had to do to survive, and just at one point in time, we quit accepting guests even, and quit selling memberships, and just took care of the members as best we could, and those that were paying our recurring revenue, until we could get to the point to reopen up to guests and start selling memberships again. So, culture to us is number one. If you don't have culture, you don't have anything else to really build and establish a true infrastructure within those 4 walls. So that's just our 2 cents on it anyway.
Hey, Trey, Joe, I love that question that you asked Trey, because that was a catalyst for what did everything and the hiring and everything that we see today. Caleb, I think we need to get Trey on the podcast to talk about that catalyst, that moment, that transition, and then everything, just kind of basically what we did today, but do that on the podcast. So you in, Trey?
Sure.
All right. Caleb will follow up with you on that. Guys, any other questions for Trey?
Question.
Go for it, Linda.
Hey, Trey, thank you so much. Such good information. I took a ton of notes. My question relates to training other people on how to interview. The way I've done it is I've interviewed in tandem with them. So it's 2 of us for every interviewee. So let's say there's 10 of them. Do that a few times, and then they're off on their own. And then, I'll still want to screen, like if they whittle it down to 4 finalists, then I'll want to meet with each of the 4. But is there a faster way how have you trained people who are new to interviewing? Because it's such an art that takes a lot of experience, right, and depth and time, and to kind of make the hiring mistakes and learn from that. So how do you do that more quickly? Because it takes forever. And it's really tedious, I found.
I had to create this program in order to train them and then go through the process with them And I will say that every time that we turn around to go and hire, I kind of have to do a little quick review. And it's not that they don't know how to ask the right questions. It's just reminding them of the mindset that they need to have, and make sure that they're posturing and those sorts of things. But I literally created this, not for myself, but I created this to train them how to do it. So, this goes back to Nicole Awesome-Force talk, where she's talking about documenting and systemizing. You can systemize your recruiting process, but it's just going to take time to kind of write down and step by step what you do, how you do it, why you do it. And that way you can train them on, create a system for your business, take this and make it your own, make it for your own business, get your own questions and so forth. So that's what we've done. I wouldn't say it's perfect, but they know what to do when they need to hire somebody. They can place the ads, they can get the calls going, they can get the candidates in. I might step in time, a little bit here and then, but they're getting it. It does take time. It isn't something that comes naturally to most people.
Okay. And do you interview everyone that is hired yourself, like once it's whittled down to a certain number, or do you trust your people and delegate that entirely for some positions?
So now I'm at the point where I try and let them do all of it. Because at the end of the day, those employees are working for them, and I am trying slowly to step back. And so they're going to have to deal with their decision. If I step in and I insert myself too much, A, they're not learning, and B, if it's my decision and the person doesn't work out, then it's my fault. If it's their decision and the person doesn't work out, then they learn something, and they'll take responsibility and move forward. So, at some point you got to, kick the bird out of the nest and let them fly and let them, bump a couple rocks and get a couple bruises. And, it's, especially with this, it's never a perfect science anyway.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Franchise Secrets Podcast. Whether you're watching or listening,